I never thought a simple trip to the grocery store could turn into a confrontation that would leave me shaking with anger and frustration. But that's exactly what happened when Karen accused me of stealing her disabled parking spot. Little did she know, I had an invisible disability that made that parking spot a necessity for me. Here's how it all went down. It was a brisk winter afternoon, and I was running errands at the local grocery store. Due to my respiratory condition, which makes it difficult to breathe, I have a handicapped parking permit that allows me to park in designated handicapped spots. These spots are necessary for me to conserve energy and avoid respiratory distress. As I pulled into one of these spots, a woman in a red minivan began to yell at me. Karen, as I will call her here, accused me of stealing her disabled parking spot. I tried to explain that I had a disability, but she cut me off. "I don't believe you," Karen snapped. "You don't look disabled to me." I was taken aback by her hostility. She didn't know anything about me, yet she was accusing me of faking a disability. I tried to explain again that I had a respiratory condition, but she wouldn't listen. She continued to berate me, saying that I was taking a parking spot away from someone who actually needed it. At that point my blood was boiling. I couldn't believe her entitlement. I tried to reason with her but she wouldn't listen. "Ma'am, I have a handicapped parking permit," I said firmly. "I have a respiratory condition that makes it difficult for me to breathe. I need this parking spot." "I don't believe you," Karen repeated. "You're just taking advantage of the system. You don't look disabled at all." "I'm sorry, but that's not true," I said. "I have a medical condition that requires me to use this parking spot. I'm not taking it away from anyone who actually needs it." Karen snorted. "You're just making excuses. You're perfectly healthy. You're just lazy and entitled." At this point I was getting angry. "I'm not entitled," I said. "I'm just trying to live my life with a disability. You have no right to judge me or accuse me of faking it." Karen sneered at me. "I have every right. You're stealing a parking spot from someone who actually needs it." "I'm not stealing anything," I said. "I have a permit and I have a disability. You need to back off and leave me alone." Karen shook her head. "I'm not going to let you get away with this. You're a liar and a cheat." I could feel my anger rising as Karen continued to accuse me of stealing her handicapped parking spot. "I'm not stealing anything," I said, my voice shaking. "I have a permit and I have a disability. You need to back off and leave me alone." Karen just sneered at me. "You're a liar and a cheat. You don't deserve that spot." "I do deserve it," I said. "I have a medical condition that requires me to use it. You have no right to judge me or accuse me of faking it." Karen laughed. "You don't look disabled to me. You're just lazy and entitled." That was the last straw. I took a deep breath and said, "You know what? I'm done with this. You can't even begin to understand what it's like to live with a disability. You have no idea what I've been through. You have no right to judge me or accuse me of faking it." At that moment, I saw a group of people watching us from a nearby car. They had heard the exchange and were clearly on my side. "Excuse me, miss," one of them said, "but I think you're being incredibly rude. This person clearly has a disability and needs that parking spot. You have no right to accuse them of anything." Karen just glared at them. "Mind your own business," she snapped. At that point, Karen seemed to realize that she wasn't going to win this argument. She got back into her minivan and drove away, red-faced and humiliated. As she left, I heard someone from the group of people who had been watching say, "Good riddance! People like that don't deserve to be out in public." I took a deep breath and tried to calm down. I was still shaking from the confrontation, but I was also grateful for the support of those strangers. As I got out of my car and headed into the grocery store, I couldn't help but feel a sense of relief. Inside the store, I went about my errands as usual. However, I couldn't shake the feeling of anger and frustration that had been building inside me during the confrontation with Karen. It wasn't fair that I had to deal with this kind of confrontation just because I had an invisible disability. I felt like I was constantly having to prove myself to people who didn't understand what it was like to live with a disability. As I was standing in the checkout line, I heard someone call out my name. I turned around to see one of the people from the group that had been watching the confrontation. "Hey," she said, "I just wanted to make sure you're okay." That lady was really out of line. I smiled weakly. "Thanks," I said. "I appreciate it. It's just frustrating sometimes, you know?" She nodded. "I can only imagine, but don't worry about it. You're doing great." As I left the grocery store, I felt a sense of gratitude for that stranger's kindness. It was a reminder that even in the face of ignorance and hostility, there are still people out there who are willing to stand up for what's right. I can't believe Karen would be so rude. People like her need to learn some compassion. Also, I bet OP has asthma or something. I have a cousin with asthma and he needs a handicapped spot too. I hope Karen learned her lesson and doesn't do this to anyone else. Would I be the jerk for not having my cancer-stricken ex-husband stay with me through his treatment? I never thought I would hear from my ex-husband again after our messy divorce. But when his cancer came back, he needed a place to stay during treatment. My house. His parents expected me to take care of him, but I couldn't shake off the bitter feelings of how our marriage ended. Here's how it all went down. For most of our marriage, my husband, 39M, and I, 37F, had a very happy relationship. We had good jobs, decent money, 2 kids, and loved each other. Then he got diagnosed with a rare form of cancer, and we went through years of painful treatments and recovery together. We moved to a small house to be close to the research center where he underwent treatment. His parents paid half of the down payment on the house. The other half was from our savings and investments. In the divorce, he gave me the house and took all of his medical debt. We have been divorced a year, but now his cancer has come back, and he needs treatment again at the same research hospital. He wants to stay in what is now my house while undergoing treatment, and his parents expect me to house him and look after him because he was generous in letting me have the house without taking his rightful share from the equity. When we were married, and he was undergoing treatment, it was new stuff that was expensive and also very physically draining on him. We were lucky that both our jobs were supportive and flexible, but with his health issues, little kids, and expenses, we had to downgrade our lifestyle a lot. That plus the physical changes in his body made him very depressed. Whenever he felt a bit better, he would go stay in his hometown. It's a small town where most of his family and a lot of his childhood friends live. I was doing all the caretaking of him, while also dealing with insurance complications. I was also managing the kids, the entire household, and my full-time job. We had help from friends and neighbors, but it was very hard. I wasn't happy about him spending his healthy days away from us, but it was good for his mental health, so I didn't feel like I could object. While he was staying there, he had reconnected with his high school girlfriend. A couple of years ago, he admitted to me that he was sleeping with her, and I filed for divorce. He had fully recovered from his cancer by then. There are other aspects around the cheating that left me very heartbroken and feeling betrayed. His giving me the house and taking all the debt was an apology of a sort. His parents feel that I owe him for getting the house and should let him stay there for the 2-3 months his treatment is at the facility. I do want him to be well, and I don't want my kids to lose a loving father, but I can't deal with having him around me, especially not if I end up being his nurse and caretaker again. I am still very bitter about how our marriage ended. A lot of people close to me are telling me that I should support him for the sake of my kids. Would I be the jerk if I say I can't do that? Here are some relevant comments on the thread. For context, they announced their engagement the day the divorce was finalized. That still hurts so much. I am struggling with this so much. I don't think I hate him. A part of me still loves him as an old friend. I definitely wouldn't want my kids to suffer the devastation of losing their father. He loves them, and is loved by them. When I look at it as an outside observer, I can understand what he was going through and falling in love with someone else. During the worst parts of his illness, I was frequently cleaning up after him, his vomiting, his loss of bowel control. I pulled muscles and injured myself helping him move. He found that emasculating, so I can see how he'd find it appealing that someone still saw him as the old him when he was healthy and strong and I became the nurse figure. So I tell myself that, and I don't hate him. But I went years without private time because he was sick. The loss of libido was an expected temporary side effect of his medication. I accepted that and made do with being celibate. I feel guilty talking about how painful it was because I should be grateful he survived, and that is so trivial given the situation. But I would do the deed with myself in hiding. Didn't even get a toy because I didn't want him to feel bad or awful for not being able to do it. And all this time I was making do thinking he wasn't able to. He was sleeping with a whole another person. And that disloyalty still makes me cry. A commenter asked, even without the cheating and whatnot, caretaking is a full-time job and it's very taxing emotionally, mentally, and physically. You're not his wife anymore. You have no obligation to do this. The original poster replied, "The last time I did it out of love, I can just not do it now. It was very difficult." The big upside to me in getting divorced was not having to deal with that anymore. As difficult as it is to take care of a sick person, dealing with the insurance bureaucracy, and keeping track of all the medical contacts and treatment details is a pretty big logistical nightmare. Another commenter suggested, maybe for the sake of his children, you could allow him to stay there, but he or his parents pay for a nurse or aide to care for him. To which the original poster responded, I hadn't started thinking on those terms yet, but yes, you are right. I have to measure how my kids will react to this. I haven't told them yet that he is sick again. They were very little back then, and only knew that dad was sick and got better. Now my oldest is big enough to understand cancer and what that means. My ex has been the fun Disney dad since we separated. They adore him. The original poster also noted, the chances of his parents being unaware that their son was sleeping with his high school girlfriend when he came home is 0. Oh, they knew and supported him. They were always good to me, so it wasn't like they wanted to break up my marriage, but they were in whatever makes him happy because he survived cancer. I think he received some side-eye for this from people who knew what we went through. and my ex-in-laws did damage control by making overly gushing social media posts about how the girlfriend always looked out for him and made him laugh when they were kids and did it again when he was going through a hard time, as if her comedy skills are what cured his cancer. I was just the background maid/nanny/assistant character that can be ignored. Sorry, I am still bitter, and I keep regurgitating the same stuff. A commenter asked if the in-laws were aware of the cheating and how they supported him. The original poster replied, "They are my kids' grandparents. The only loving grandparents my kids have. They dote on my kids and drive hours to spend time with them and take them places. I resent them, but they are good grandparents." Our judgment here on You're the Jerk is that the OP is not the jerk. But here's another update to the story. The Sunday after I made the post to you'rethejerk.com, my ex-in-laws picked up the kids for a zoo trip. They sometimes come to pick them up to entertain them, so I thought nothing of it. A few hours later, a very teary and contrite mother-in-law dropped off 2 bawling kids with me. She told them their dad is sick and will die if he doesn't stay with us and go to the hospital. We hadn't had a talk with the kids yet about the diagnosis, and she dropped it on them that he is dying from cancer. He is not dying. It's a painful treatment, but he'll recover. I was so furious, I was raging. I called the ex and tore him a new one. He was shocked too, and we together exploded at his mom. She broke down and cried, begging me to not take away her grandkids from her, as if I'd trust her after this. Ex and I together talked to the kids, him on video, and assured them that yes, he is sick, but he'll be fine. He just needs to go to the hospital, and they'll make him better like the last time he was sick. The kids settled after that, but my oldest has been at me, crying and begging to make Dad come live with us. I promised them I'd talk to Dad and figure out what's the best thing to do. I swallowed a lot of bile to talk to him about why he was doing this. We had a pretty long and detailed discussion. The bottom line is that he's broke. He still has a decent job, but his credit is ruined. He has a lot of debt, and he stupidly got the cheapest insurance that barely covers anything. His fiancée is no help either. She's worse off financially, so he needs a place to stay. He can't afford this otherwise. His parents are funding some of his medical payments and are already stretched. He was financially all right when we broke up, so I have no idea what happened in such a short time. Anyway, ex and his girlfriend moved into my daughter's room. My daughter happily gave it up to her dad and is sharing her little brother's room. Both kids are over the moon happy to have their dad in their home. My daughter keeps checking on him every few minutes to make sure he's still okay. Mother-in-law traumatized my kid. I'll never forgive that woman for this. I let the girlfriend move in with him because I was too angry to care about who came to look after him as long as it wasn't me. I didn't know how I could bear having her in my home, but it appears to be more misery for her than me, and that strangely makes it more tolerable for me. She is teary-eyed and crying all the time. It's only been 3 days, but I am so annoyed I want to shake her and tell her to pull it together. The current treatment plan is for 3 months, and I'm counting down the days. I'm thankful for the many people who gave me great advice on my last post. I wasn't expecting things to go this way, but they played me by manipulating my kids. I'll slowly pull myself and the kids away and move, but for now, I have to deal with this for my kids' sake. ETA. I was trying to make this update more than a week ago, so to add to that, X's treatment is coming along nicely. The tumors that grew again are much smaller than before, and the new stuff that they are giving him is more directed too, so he's not having as many bad symptoms as he had last time. I had promised myself I would do nothing to help, and I stayed away from both X and his fiancée. But I did end up helping him deal with insurance. His fiancée has the personality of a wet noodle and cries all the time. It was easier for me to do it than deal with her struggling. X is polite enough to me, but his personality has changed. He is a different person and not very nice towards his fiancée. I didn't expect to, but I feel sorry for her. A commenter suggested that the OP should open up a can of petty and gave a list of suggestions. The third suggestion was to ask if the girlfriend could look after the kids for the day her ex-husband doesn't have treatment. Then the OP could go out on a date looking like $1,000,000. I've done #3 2 times already, the OP replied. The OP hasn't dated since the divorce but wants to. Online dating scares her and her social life revolves around her kids. I am pretending to have plans just so I am dressed and out and feel good about myself. I didn't leave the kids with them though. I managed to arrange a sleepover for the kids with their friends on those nights, the OP explained. The OP has been amazed by the amount of love and support she and her kids have been receiving from their neighbors and friends. I have received a lot of offers for help. People can be kind, the OP said. They were invited to a camping trip on Easter weekend, and the OP planned to take the kids. The ex-mother-in-law was making noises about having the kids over, but the OP shut that down. You are a saint, a commenter said. Not a saint, no. I am just trying to protect my kids and my sanity. I am keeping myself very busy and staying on task. I am working hard to avoid thinking things because that way is misery, the OP replied. This is very petty of me, but I have to admit that seeing they are not doing well has been somewhat mollifying for me, emotionally. Another commenter suggested that the OP look into dating events that companies run. It might be worth looking into dating events that companies run. It might be a smoother way into the reintroduction to the dating world, when you're ready, than dating sites. I haven't done online dating, but a friend of mine just married her husband who she met at a dating baking class. Have a look at what's in your area. I need to look into dating events. I didn't know this was a thing. I need a detailed guide on how to do these things now, the OP said. Regarding selling the house, the OP has started looking into it and researching places to move to. But it is so very difficult. I don't have the budget to put the house on the market while I live elsewhere, especially if it takes longer than 2 months to sell. I also don't feel secure opening the house for showings while my kids and I live here. The other issue is that I don't have close family I can rely on, and here in this neighborhood, I had built up an awesome support system between neighbors and friends. Giving that up and starting somewhere new with 2 little kids in tow is daunting, the OP explained. A commenter suggested an alternative solution, which was to sit down with the ex-husband and the kids to explain that this is a one-time offer. After these 3 months are up, they need to start saving and planning for any future care. I talked to my ex about it before he moved here. He agreed never again. With my daughter, though, I am going to wait to have that conversation when she's not so freaked out about her dad's mortality, the OP said. It's really awful how the mother-in-law manipulated the situation and traumatized the kids like that. It's good that the OP is considering moving out eventually. It's important for her and her kids to have a safe and healthy environment, and it doesn't seem like having the ex-husband and his girlfriend there is contributing to that. Am I the jerk for kicking my son's girlfriend out of our house? I was excited to finally meet my son's girlfriend, whom he had been talking about for months, but as soon as she opened her mouth, my world came crashing down. What she said was something I never expected to hear, something that made me see my son in a whole new light. Here's how it all went down. My husband, 58 male, and I, 56 female, recently met my son's, 24 male girlfriend for the first time. He's been crazy about her. Apparently, they've been dating for a year before he decided to have her meet us officially. What he's told us about her all seems great. She just got her degree, was enjoying her job, family-oriented, etc. I'm honestly just glad he's happy with her. My husband and I don't think he's ever been this into someone before, so I feel pretty bad about what I did. Last weekend he brought her over for dinner. By now we had been anticipating meeting her with how much our son has been gushing about her. How perfect she is, that she is the one, in his words. They ring the doorbell. We open the door. She looks exactly like her pictures, which is a great start. My son is grinning ear to ear. Another great start. We invite them in. She accepts my hug and a firm handshake from my husband, and then she opens her mouth. I'm the one your son puts his penis in. To be frank, I was appalled. I expected my husband to laugh. Both he and my son are jokesters, and as annoying as it can be, I love it. But this was just too much for me. Maybe I am reserved, but of all things she could have shared about my son, she told us that. One look at my face and my husband knew how much I disapproved. Maybe I let my expectations get too high, and it's unfair to have them, but I reiterate, of all things to say to her boyfriend's parents, whom she had never met, she chose that. My son was amused at first, but when he noticed my reaction, his face dropped. I felt like he'd sold me the full package, everything he'd always been looking for in a girlfriend. I was too disturbed by the visual it put in my head, and it translated into anger. I told her to get out, and I wanted to say more about how gross it made me feel, but I fortunately left it at that. My son didn't want to go, insisting I give her another chance, but I was too fed up and uncomfortable by this point. Even my husband, who's enjoyed his fair share of raunchy jokes, wouldn't let up. They left, and I immediately felt guilty. This was something my son had really looked forward to, and I feel like I took that away over a dumb joke. I tried calling to apologize, but he hasn't responded. My husband thinks she's the one who should apologize. I'm considering giving her another chance, but before I do, was I the jerk? A commenter asked, is it possible your son told her to say that? And the OP replied, this honestly wouldn't surprise me, but I'm not gonna lie, I'd be disappointed in him. That's not something he'd ever say in front of me directly because he knows I'm not a fan of any of personal jokes of that nature. So to make his girlfriend say it wouldn't be very good, and I'd hope that if that is the case that he makes it up to her somehow. I'll try to reach out again to let them know we can try again. That possibility makes me feel 1,000 times worse. Another commenter asked, did she even try to apologize or was she nervous? And the OP said, I honestly don't think I gave her enough time to react properly, and I regret that. Things could have gone a lot smoother if I had. She was just sort of frozen in shock, and she kept looking at my son to try to convince me not to kick her out. I guess she wasn't sure what else she could say at that point. It's hard to say for sure because I don't know her that well yet, but I think she was anxious. Too much to realize what she said was inappropriate, so if she was embarrassed I couldn't tell. I also don't think I gave her much of a chance since it all happened so fast. I'll try to reach out to my son about it. When asked if the husband had been making any raunchy jokes leading up to her visit, the OP said, "I can honestly say no, I've never heard my husband say that. He's raunchy, yes, but not when it comes to our kids." In regards to the situation, the OP reflected and said, "I agree, I should have been more patient about it. I think if we were to try again things will go much smoother. Hopefully we can laugh about this later down the line, and leave it at that. I wish I took this approach. Without making too many excuses for myself, I can say I got too caught in the heat of the moment. He's not forcing me to give her another chance. I want a do-over. I think we all deserve it. I don't think she'll make another joke like that again." When asked if the OP could try texting/contacting her directly, the OP said, "I would love that approach, but I unfortunately don't have any way of contacting her except through my son. He said he'll give me a call when he gets the chance, so surely by the end of the week. I can't imagine how badly I made her feel about this and regret it." There were also a few heavily downvoted comments on, "You should just be more sex positive." To which the OP replied, "Not gonna lie, I think this took an extreme turn. I'm not at all against sex inclusivity, positivity, or whatever it is. I'm well aware it's human nature and that my son has sex. I know it's normal, but I'm entitled to my ignorance about the details. They've already been dating a year. I'd be surprised if they weren't having sex. That doesn't warrant her saying it though." The OP left this update. "I should clear some things up. My husband had no part in my reaction. I did the kicking out, not him. I don't want him taking the fall for this. He said she should apologize, but I'm not expecting an apology. Sorry for the confusion. My son lives in a nearby state. It can take about an hour to get back to where we live. He also hasn't dated anyone seriously for a while, maybe a couple of years. He told us before that he wouldn't bring anyone home unless he's sure he wants a future with her. We've been asking to meet her ever since he told us about her, but he wanted to be ready. The comment about her looking like her picture shows my age. Sorry for that. He's only shown us her photos she sent him as he apparently didn't have any of them together. He hates taking pictures and apparently she's always teasing him about it. I don't think he'd ever lie about who she is, but it's just a parental concern I've subconsciously had. I felt the same way about my daughter's then-boyfriend when we first met him. I don't have any criteria that either of my kids' spouses need to meet. I just hope my kids are happy with them. What I meant by her being the full package was indicative of what he's told us about her. As his parents, we have a good idea of what he looks for in a partner, and she checked off everything based on what we'd been told. And on top of everything, aside from what she said, her appearance was how she presented it to be. Again, we aren't strict about appearances. It's just a relief to have met someone for the first time, and they look like what you'd expected. My husband said that I was worried about secondhand catfishing, if that's even a thing, lol. I guess it shows how anxious I was about this. We here at You're the Jerk believe that you're not the jerk. The OP left this final update. "Thanks for reaching out, everyone. My son got in touch with me. His girlfriend agreed to try again. We all met at a restaurant my son and his girlfriend chose. The first thing she said was an apology for what she said. I apologized for my reaction. We hugged. It was nice. She then explained how my son had convinced her a joke like that would land well, and that she wouldn't have said it if she didn't think we'd like it. According to my son, she was reluctant to open with any jokes at all, but they came up with that one together on the way over. You guys were right. She's a really sweet girl. She's actually very mature too. I see why my son likes her so much. My husband and I really like her. We told our son to bring her when he visits. We look forward to seeing them again. Overall, I'm glad we could start over, on the right foot this time. Thanks everyone for your input." What a happy ending. If you enjoyed today's stories, check out the other videos on your screen now. Submit your own stories, just like OP did, at you'rethejerk.com. Subscribe now, or you're definitely the jerk.